Today we're talking with Eric Upchurch. Eric is the co-founder of Active Duty Passive Income, a community dedicated to empowering service members, veterans, and spouses to reach financial freedom by creating passive income through real estate investing. He's a former aircraft repairman for the 160th, the Army's most elite aviation regiment. He's got a very impressive portfolio of commercial real estate investments, and he's on a mission to help end veteran homelessness in the U.S. In fact, just a couple weeks after we record this, he's going on a 200-plus mile hike to raise money to support that cause. So with that, I hope you enjoy this awesome conversation with Eric Upchurch. Most people you talk to when transitioning out of the military have never actually transitioned out themselves. You're probably getting a bunch of opinions from people who plan on staying in until retirement and have no idea how to actually show empathy for your situation. This podcast is about providing fresh perspectives and a front row seat for conversations with successful veterans doing big things after leaving the military. Our whole purpose for this show is to tell the stories of people that are doing great things in the civilian world post-service so that we can inspire and show some options for people that are transitioning out, and hope that we can offer some things that they can learn from or potential career fields they could pursue as they're getting out of the military, and hope they can make a good transition. So that's kind of the whole crux of this podcast we've started.
Right up my alley. It's right up my alley. I'll have a lot of things to consider for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, and I love your initiative on ending homelessness too. So I'd love to jump into that more too.
Yeah, getting ready for that hike.
I know, man. Yeah, well, I'll say that for the show here, but I want to hear more about it too.
Yep. I appreciate you coming on. We didn't intend for this to be real estate focused, but obviously we have a very big interest in real estate, and really anybody who's seeing much success in life is probably involved in real estate in some way. So many of these have been talking a little bit about real estate, but obviously that's a huge focus for you guys. But I'm really interested to hear more about what you're doing and excited to jump into it.
Jack and I both served in the Army, so that's our background. Jack is full-time in real estate out in Hawaii now. I've been in and out of real estate, have personal rentals and stuff, but I live in North Carolina. So yeah, real estate's near and dear to both of our hearts. And the ADPI community has been awesome throughout the years.
I've got assets in North Carolina and Wilmington.
I'm in Raleigh, so I'm not far away, man.
Cool. Yeah, we've got one of our best assets is in Wilmington, student housing deal next to UNCW.
Oh, nice. That's a good spot.
It's great. Yeah, we just 144 beds, and we just doubled the size from 72 when we picked it up. So it's killer.
Dang.
Nice.
Well done, man.
It's good to see that value add is still working out.
Yeah, well, you got to build. That's all.
We'd love to start off just a little bit about your background, a little bit about your military experience, your transition process, and what you're up to these days.
Yeah, you got it. So I enlisted after college. Most people would be an officer. I chose to be enlisted because, instead of using the GI Bill, I disenrolled from the GI Bill and got the loan repayment program, which was kind of just did it reverse. I went to college, then enlisted. So chose not to be an officer because it wiped out basically 60 grand of debt from UC Santa Barbara. And then when I enlisted, I was like, okay, I don't want to kick doors down, 11 Bravo's out. Sorry, you guys. But I was like, I want to be safe, and I want to just serve, and I want to, learn something new. So I signed up to be an aircraft structural repairman, which was a fantastic field, very hands-on. And I ended up doing very well at that, not because I'm technically skilled with the labor with my hands, but I was trying to make it home to my wedding on time. And so it was literally 3 days after graduating AIT that I was getting married in Santa Barbara. So I had no room for error. And you guys know, you piss off the wrong drill sergeant, you get recycled for any reason. They don't care about your wedding. You're going to get recycled. And so I would have missed my wedding. So anyway, long story short, the only reason I ended up in special operations is because I ended up at the top of my class because I was trying to make it home to my wedding. So then I went to 160th, again, as an aircraft structural repairman, and I enlisted as an E4 because I had a college degree. So I stood out. I was trying to be the gray man through basic and AIT. And when I got to the unit, and everyone was like, okay, who's this 25-year-old E4? He's obviously got some experience. And I was just as green as anybody, but I had college. So anyway, yeah, I got to the unit and I served 6 years in 160th in the Aviation Regiment, and got to lead 27 soldiers and deployed 5 times. And unfortunately, it was also, I mean, it was an honor, but I was the burial detail NCOIC for the unit. When we lost one of our guys, we had to drop what we were doing and go to their hometowns, and learned a lot from that too, about myself and about the meaning of life. And I'm sure we'll get into all that stuff, but a lot of soul searching in that 6 year period, and to be honest, after as well. And I guess, I could stop there, but I think you asked what I'm up to now. I did transition. I had to figure it out. Like, if you're listening right now and you're like, okay, I'm getting out soon, what the hell am I going to do? We can talk about that in depth here, but like, I didn't know. I just knew I had a job opportunity back where my wife was born, in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I took it. I was like, okay, I kind of figured it out. But now we run the largest military real estate investing education platform in the US. It's called Active Duty Passive Income, and we've got 80,000 members, and 40 something meetups worldwide, and a book and courses, and and we're really just helping 3 million military families in the next 10 years. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, you guys do tremendous work. I've been a fan for a number of years now. So when you were getting out, you had an option, you said. So how did you approach that process? What were some of your considerations, and how did you get into the real estate world to begin with?
Yeah. So, by the way, when I got out, everyone thought I was crazy because, when I was serving, first of all, I was in the unit that a lot of people really, especially in the aviation world, they wanted to get into, and it's very difficult to get into. So I was lucky there that those were my circumstances. But then I'd been sent to all the cool schools and stuff, and they were dangling those. They were like, we're already this invested in you over 6 years. You should stay. Well, how about you go to Ranger School or Halo? And I'm like, I'm an aircraft structural repairman. I mean, I already had air assault, airborne, SEER, some of the requirements of the unit and stuff, Pathfinder. But I just, at some point I was like, okay, what am I doing? Hold on a second. Like, I don't need those things in my life. They're not going to add anything to my soldiers. They're not going to add anything to my career. And to be honest, I don't know if I'm going to do 20 years. And the deciding factor was really for me to ETS was when I had buried my friends. When I really started to look at that, I had my first son, who's now about to be in high school starting next week, which is kind of insane to me because in my head, I'm still 25 or so. But
you're 27 now.
Yeah, 27 now. So when I started burying my friends, I started kind of going, look, okay, like, when is it, is it my turn? I just started thinking about the mortality of everything, and just, life in a different way. And I have my son, and I saw all the grieving families when I was at the funerals, and folding the flag over my fallen comrade and stuff. And so that really just did it. And I had a job offer. And so I was like, all right, I just got to do it. I just got to cut the cord and just, and in retrospect, it was absolutely the right move because you can make a lot more money when you're out of the military. That was an E6 when I ETS'd, and, making, was it $42,000 a year or something at the time. And I'm like, that's a lot of work for 40 grand, man, And so it was the right decision for me at the time. And again, in retrospect, I'm glad I did do that, and I miss it. I mean, I think we all have that one part of us that we can go like, oh man, but what you really miss, you don't miss standing in formation in the Savannah heat, getting eaten by sand gnats. You don't miss the long rucks. What you miss is the camaraderie. You miss the sense of purpose and mission, and where to be when, and what uniform with what attitude. Like, that's what you miss actually. And those are chemical things that you can achieve again out of the service. And we can talk about that for sure, because that's what it takes when you transition. You've got to find that chemical concoction that the military gave you inherently, and then you'll be fulfilled once again.
I would love to hear more. The recent podcast episodes that we've done have been, their transition was pre having kids. Griffin and I both have young kids, and we transitioned with kids, and it sounds like you did that as well. How was that thought process? Especially, you said you had a job offer, which is great. You had something solid, but how was that transition leaving service and leaving that safety net when you had a child to worry about more so than just yourself?
Well, not only that, the job offer was for $60,000 a year in the San Francisco Bay Area. So if that doesn't scare you, I don't know
Right,
what
right.
would. But I also I trusted myself. I trusted myself as a leader at that point. I trusted myself with my self-discipline at that point, and my wife did also. So there was and again, family. That's where we were moving back to where my wife was came from. So there was still a bit of a safety net of like, okay, well, we have people, we're not going to be homeless. We have people around us to support us if we need it. And so I think it was just a little bit of a combination of trusting myself, knowing that I had something to start with, and that I would be able to go reach out and find what works after that. But yeah, I didn't have like oh, this is my passion. I'm going to go be some crazy entrepreneur and I'm going to do these things. I was just feeling it out. I was like, here's an opportunity. I got to take it. This is my time to jump. And I did.
Nice. What was the job when you got out?
It's in sales, just a construction product. Yep.
Did that give you kind of the time to pursue the passive income kind of stuff, or
Well, not
what
not
was
at
the
all. So
transition into that?
yeah, so I was driving and I believe at the time it was on the radio. Yeah, it's not even XM or anything. It was just on the radio. This is like for time frame. This is like 2014 or something. I'm driving in my truck around the Bay Area and I hear an ad for a free 90-minute seminar. Anybody ever heard those before?
Never. No, I don't know if those exist anymore.
Come to this, so hook, line, and sinker. I fall into the 90-minute seminar trap. Come to this free 90-minute seminar, and I learned a little bit about like tax lien investing, and that's at the end of it was like learn how to flip in 90 minutes, and that was obviously the teaser, but it was free. And I was like, okay, cool, maybe I'll get a free soda out of it or whatever, learn something new. I was also listening to audiobooks, like Millionaire Next Door and some other stuff, just to kind of like make myself think a little differently. So I had, for whatever reason, I was starting to kind of think of bigger things. And I'll tell you, I know I'm backtracking here, but like trying to set up my mindset here. I had a rental in Savannah that I bought with my VA loan in 2006. I couldn't sell it for a profit and I wasn't about to lose money. So we rented it. And so when we came back to the Bay Area, it was barely making any money. It was like $80 a month. And when something broke, that took like 3 or 4 months worth of net profit down the tubes, So, but that made me start thinking, okay, let me think about these things and let's see if there's a better way to do it. And sure enough, there's definitely a better way to do it. So then I went to this, read some books, started listening to Bigger Pockets podcast. I went to that free seminar, hook, line, and sinker. I was like, yeah. And then at the end of the thing, back of the room, for $1,000, you can go to the boot camp next weekend, here in San Jose and learn how to flip. It's a 3-day event and da da da. Okay, fast forward, $25,000 later, I invested in the course. And here's the thing, I'm laughing because while I couldn't, and by the way, 25 grand at that time was like dipping into all the savings. And my wife was not at that event. So I had to go home from a 3-day event. Every night I was driving back and forth. And I'd go and I'd be like, hey, babe, check out what I learned. And then she's like, okay, like imagine trying to sell your wife on an idea when she didn't experience the thing that you just did. We can flip houses in the San Francisco Bay Area. This is going to be awesome. So I sold her on the idea, and we invested in that. But check this out. While I hate using the word couldn't, but at the time wasn't ready yet, I would say, to invest to be able to flip houses in the Bay Area. I met people. I was intentional about spending time with people in the audience in that room. And I happened to sit next to a guy, and this is like me strategically thinking. I encourage people to think this way too, because networking is my favorite thing to do. Because you never know what you're going to get. So sometimes you'll sit next to somebody in a hoodie that is a multimillionaire and you would never know it. So I chose at this point, and I had already done that the day prior. So this day I was like, I'm going to go sit next to this older gentleman. He's maybe 55, 60. I'm going to sit next to him and he's wearing a blazer. Maybe he knows something I don't know. And sure enough, that guy ended up making us $250,000 in the next 9 months. So it was a relationship I made in the room, not the flipping, not the thing that I was there to learn. It was the people. And so I'll emphasize that whether you're interested in real estate investing, and we don't even have to talk about that because it's not about that. Whatever you're interested in, connect with people. And I'm going to talk about that later for sure, because connecting with people is so inherently the right thing to do for military members, because we connected with people and teams in service. So in that room, I connected with several of the right people, one in particular, who ended up renovating my next house that we were living in, and we bought it, sold it, profited 200. So that's kind of how I got started. And from there, I was like really head on a swivel. And then I was like, okay, people are actually doing this like intentionally. There's a whole community and there's like all these resources. And I just, my head exploded with information, which is another problem, right?
Have you always been the type to go up to someone, a stranger, and make friends and quote unquote network? And how do you, even if you are that type of person, just naturally, how do you approach that sort of thing? How would you coach a current transitioning service member to do that same sort of thing?
I'm an introvert. So it's weird to say that yes, like if you ask my mom, she would be like, oh yeah, he made friends really, really easily as a kid. But I'm introverted. And so what you can do, and I love giving practical things, especially to audiences like this. What you can do is you have to have one-time courage. All you have to do, even for introverts like me, you have to find one commonality. If you're at a summer camp, and this is something I remember, the first time I realized that I was okay at making friends, I was at a summer camp, and there was like a theme, it was like pioneer camp or something. We're like making soap from scratch or something, and sleeping in a tent. I was like, okay, this is a community of people like me who came for a specific reason. Let's talk about it. So if you're at a conference or you're at a coffee shop, whatever it is, anywhere in between, find one commonality with somebody in the room, interject yourself. If they're by themselves, that's easy. You walk up and pay them a compliment, to say, hey, I drink black coffee too. Looks, let's chat. What are you up to? Whatever it is, right? Find the commonality and one-time courage. Just say, hey, I'm Eric. I don't think we've met. That's it. That's all you got to do. And then as you're networking, if you make somebody else the most important person in the room, they will think that you are a superstar. So it's as easy as this. Keep asking them questions about themselves. That's it. That's the trick. If they tell you that, they were the bottom of their class in high school, ask them why, and then, oh, my sister does. Oh, tell me about your sister. Like, what's she doing now? Like, whatever it is, just they're leading you on this journey. Let them go, because people love talking about themselves. I do. We all do. Mm-hmm. And so, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just human nature. We all are the center kind of our own universes. And obviously we have family that becomes more important and other stuff we would like to think, but inherently, you ask me about myself, I get an endorphin hit. And I talk about chemicals all the time, because you can't tell me that I'm not going to get a dopamine hit if you say Eric. I'm not trying. I don't care to. It just happens. So if somebody's got a name tag on, just go up and be like, hey, Griffin, what's going on? Boom. They're like, whoa, that guy knows my name. Well, yeah, you're wearing a name tag. It doesn't matter though, because you got the dopamine hit from the person. So practical tip, one-time courage. Go network with people, find a commonality, and just strike up a conversation. And introverts can do that. And when introverts get into a conversation where they feel comfortable, they can be very extroverted. So I don't know if you guys have done the 16 personalities, Myers-Briggs, but I'm an INTJ. So when I'm talking to you guys about business and veterans and real estate or whatever it is, I can talk in circles because I love it and it energizes me. But you know what I'm going to do after this? I'm going to sit in silence by myself and recharge. So I'll speak on stage in front of 1,000 people and and after that, immediately I go to my room and I sit there quietly, because my energy is just drained. So use that to your advantage, even if you're an introvert. Extroverts, you got no problem.
You strike me as someone who not only has that one-time dose of courage, but also someone who is probably methodical about follow-up as well and continuing those relationships. Do you have certain ways that you think about that or do that?
Yeah. Yes. So take some familiarity. So like if you tell me that you I'm just going to make up some random thing, like you grew up next to a creek. I'm going to remember, and this works really well when you're talking to like gatekeepers on real estate deals or whatever, like networking with brokers or real estate agents or just anybody in your life. If somebody talks about their cat, remember them as the person that has the cat. Or the person that seems to talk about bad weather all the time, or, you know, whatever the thing is, remember that, because it might not be important to you right now, but remember, you're trying to be important to them. So the way you're important to them is to keep them in mind. So whenever I think about that person who has a cat and I see some new cat toy, this is a terrible example, I don't know why I went down this road, but I'm going to text that person and say, hey, I was just thinking of you. Have you seen this cat toy? And that's how I follow up. I don't follow up very well with CRMs and you know, like funnels and emails and things like that. I'm more like just personal. Like if I think of my buddy Chris down in Long Beach, I'm gonna text him and be like, hey buddy, how you doing? I saw you were on that boat. Looks fun. We should do that next time. Whatever it is. And I have several friends who are really good about this too. Just even this week, someone texted me and said, hey, I have somebody I need you to meet. It's because she knew that this woman had a veteran fund, and actually called the veteran fund. And she's like, you need to talk to her, and I'll get you connected. I love doing that stuff. It gives me like almost a sense of purpose too, because I'm like, whenever I connect somebody, I'm a connector. I'm like, so you're just putting the pieces together. You don't even have to be organized. I am not organized. My team laughs at me because I use Post-it notes all the time. Like they're like, why don't you put that in like ClickUp or something? I'm like, yeah, but like the list is right here.
Yeah. Well, some cat persons out there like, yes, this guy gets my kind of guy.
Just thinking about something that that will make that person memorable to you, and you're kind of putting them in a category of like, okay, Eric's the military real estate investor. Cool. I'm going to reach out to him whenever there's something interconnected. I'm just going to make a hinge. So that happens with me all the time because I've branded it that way. So when you're talking to somebody and telling somebody about yourself, this is also a good thing, a good piece of advice, is to kind of brand yourself. I don't mean like for somebody getting started in entrepreneurship, I don't mean like a logo brand. I mean, talk about stuff that's personally important to you. That's your brand. Like what motivates you? Like ending veteran homelessness motivates me. You know, doing hard things that no one thinks is physically possible motivates me. So find stuff that is you, just internally, and then tell people about that, because then you'll start to brand yourself, and you'll end up being the go-to guy. I don't care if it's like you're part of a car club or something, like be the guy who has that 66 Chevelle and wants to talk about all of the details. Like be that guy or girl.
Talk about doing things that are hard or that motivate you, and just backtracking a little bit. One of the leader that I most respect from the military time, he said the military in general doesn't compensate you financially, but it compensates you in camaraderie and adventure. And you had a great point earlier about there are ways to achieve that outside of the military. Can you speak a little bit more to how you're doing that? I love I know you're going on a big hike here in a couple weeks. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I mean, so one thing I learned in the unit, so in the special operations community, which I didn't sign up for, I didn't mean to sign up for. I was also ended up being the distinguished honor graduate for special operations qualification course. I don't mean that to toot my horn. I mean that to say like, that's the moment I realized when I really test myself, I can do things that I was just like, never would have expected, never would have thought was a possibility. And so from that, and then other things that I was able to do in the military as well, that I feel like were, you know, physical feats or emotional or mental feats or whatever they were, I took that into my passion outside and said, okay, can I do a half Ironman without training? And, you know, so putting that on the calendar and making that a reality. Can I do a 170-mile hike in 9 days to raise awareness and money for a great cause? Now we're at kind of what you alluded to, we're hiking the John Muir Trail, which is 211 plus miles. We're hiking up to the top of Half Dome, which is like 58, I think it's 5,800 feet of elevation in 7.2 miles. And then we're hiking out another 17 or 18 miles that day. But then collectively summiting Mount Whitney at the end, which is the highest peak at 14,505 in the lower 48. So it'll be 2 weeks in the woods, and just doing hard things, and showing people that, I mean, the purpose of these really are to push myself and a group of people to raise money, to raise awareness, but physically as well. And to say there's nothing harder, and, building up the story, there's nothing harder than one of our brothers and sisters in arms sleeping under a bridge, who is not an addict necessarily, and just fell in hard times and needs to be helped. And there's, as of 2020, there were about 38,000 homeless veterans, and today there's somewhere around 32,000. So we're making a big dent with Veterans Community Project, and it's just something I'm passionate about. And I can use one of my, so you can use the 3 T's: talent, time, or treasure. Treasure being just money. You can donate your talent or your time. It doesn't have to be money. Donate your talent or your time to a cause that's bigger than yourself, but that you also enjoy. And that's where you can really thrive as a veteran, as a military member. You can give your time and talents that you have learned and experienced in the military to some other cause that's bigger than you. It doesn't have to be a nonprofit. It could be a for-profit effort also, but you have that capability. Just find what makes you tick and go put the energy into that, because other people will benefit from your ability to share that. So I'm fortunate that I've been able to, put my time into helping, build some houses for homeless veterans, and collectively we've raised close to $600,000 to the cause. So
wow, that's awesome. Just not to get sidetracked here, but have you been in the lottery for Whitney for a little while? I've wanted to do Whitney. I know it's hard to get.
So if you start at Lyle Canyon, so if you start basically, if you put the entry point as basically the floor, the Yosemite Valley floor, which is where the start point is, you have a 2% chance of getting a permit, even if you're just a solo hiker. I was applying for 9 permits and I tried everywhere from 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 permits for 6 weeks. I was every Saturday morning at midnight, I was clicking that button, and I didn't get it for 6 weeks. So I changed the start point to basically skipping day 1 and starting there, and I was able to get 5 permits. So we have 5 of us hiking. Now what we're doing is we're day hiking leg 1 a couple of days prior. So we're going to get the whole trail. But yeah, it's not easy. But there's a point for you. If you want it bad enough, you will figure out a way to do it. And for us, it was just starting at a new start point and then going back and doing the other leg as well.
That's been also a recurring theme. The idea of these active duty transition, what can somebody do before they actually transition? Or what would your recommendation be to focus on before they transition, if they're a year or 2 years out and they have that time to be able to set up what their next endeavor is going to be?
Yeah, I'll say a couple of things. One related to real estate, because the reason my company exists is because we wish somebody had told us these things. And so we just started doing the things we wish we knew. And then we created a community and solutions and resources around helping other people find that same solution. So if I could go back to 2006, I would have, knowing what I know now, I would have found a realtor who could help me buy a 4-plex with the VA loan and live in 1 unit with my young family and cash flow the other 3 units, and just like either reduce or eliminate my highest expense, which is my cost of living, my living expense. Have other people pay my mortgage. And I want people to know that they can do that. You can download a copy of our book for free, or you can buy it on Amazon. I don't need to pitch that, but it's a great way to just learn what all of us at ADPI wish every service member knew, because it's such a, and we all like kind of fall into accidental landlordship, and it's like, you shouldn't do that anymore. The information's out there, and that's why we're going to reach 3 million military families in the next 10 years, because we have to get that information out. only 13% of veterans are using the VA loan. So that's one thing I would do, is to kind of look at that. Even if you're 2 years out from transitioning, still try and do that, because when you ETS, you can either sell that asset or keep it and rent it, and then you got a thriving fourplex wherever you were, right? Or it doesn't have to be fourplex, 2, 3, 4 units, whatever.
Right.
And then on the other side, I'll say this is a little bit of a different topic, but make sure you are prepared for the chemical come down. And you can't physically be prepared for it, but you can know that it's coming. Awareness is, I guess, where I'm going with that. So when you're serving, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, but you have dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin and epinephrine and all of these like chemicals that are important and provided and while you're serving. And when you transition out, and you couple that with camaraderie, team, mission, purpose, that stuff, that is why we miss service. It's none of the BS. It's because that is an accumulation, a concoction that the military has drummed up that is highly addictive. But I want to, I guess, warn people, or just have people be aware to prepare for this, is when you leave, you don't have the same meaning of what you're doing every day, and the purpose can sometimes be gone, and your team is nowhere to be seen. And you're not standing in formation with anybody. You're going into an office where you're one of dozens at least, right? You thought you were a number then. Well, wait till you get into an office setting or something, right? So finding new meaning and purpose is really important, and it can start with volunteerism and the time and treasure, time, talent, treasure thing. But you got to be prepared for that, because it is like hitting a brick wall when you get out, whether it's 1 year from getting out or 10 years from getting out. That's why you see a lot of veterans kind of break down and go, like, what's happening to me right now? Why am I feeling these emotions? Or you suppress the emotions to a breaking point where you start doing destructive behavior. You start lashing out at people, ruining relationships, divorce, getting arrested, starting to do thrill-seeking stuff, or getting in bar fights or whatever that stuff. That is not your fault. I mean, sometimes it is if you're just a dick, but other times it's not your fault. It's a reaction that you have because of withdrawal. It's a chemical withdrawal that your body's like trying to find. Like, where do I get that adrenaline from? It's from doing something crazy. Where do I get that sense of feeling needed again, a purpose? Well, it's from nagging with your wife all the time and causing a divorce. Then you feel like the drama creates need. So these are byproducts of kind of a withdrawal from these chemicals. So be prepared for that. And a practical thing you can do is go to the VA. Honestly, that's what I did. I waited a year because I had a great career. What I didn't realize is that burying my friends and seeing destruction and death it had an effect, and I didn't see it right away. And the first day I was in the VA, kind of reluctantly, to be honest, I was like, just go check it out, because I feel like my family deserves this, at least for me to go get it checked out. And I was in tears, and I don't typically cry over much or anything, unless it's a good rom-com or something, but or the national anthem. This is a funny thing. I'm like, seriously have a hard time with the national anthem. I like, whenever it plays, I choke up. It's kind of embarrassing, but
Can't watch the Olympics.
I know. I made a joke last night. I was like, oh, if they play the Star Spangled Banner, I'm gonna have to stand up, put my hand over my heart. If I maybe fast forward through that part, my kids are laughing.
Why is Eric saluting right now?
Yeah. But yeah, go see behavioral health, and just own it, because it's not anything you can control what happens to you. It's your body doing what it does. You have a beautiful machine that's working its stuff and trying to figure it out, and you gotta take care of it.
I think what I'm hearing is acknowledging that you have to be intentional when you transition out, because oftentimes it's just easy and it's done for you when you're in the military, and the chemical hits that you're getting, that just happens. But when you're out, if you're not careful, and you're not intentional about what you're doing, it's going to be lacking because there's not this massive organization that has an interest in keeping you on your toes and involved. But I think if anybody's looking forward to that transition, it's easier to do than you might think. You just have to be intentional with it. There's so many options out there, specifically, like you said, with the volunteering. I love that. I think that's absolutely something people should start with when they're thinking of transitioning out. Start to volunteer, start to join those organizations where you can get some interactions with people who are in the civilian sector. Whether you're going to work with them or be friends with them when you get out, or maybe you're going to geographically switch locations, but it's definitely worth to see the other side, because when you're in the military, you're surrounded by everybody who's in the military. And I'm sure in your organization, you get a lot of naysayers about the passive income while active duty. There's so many people out there that haven't given things a chance, and they'll just negate it because that's not the path they took. So put yourself out there and really realize that there are people outside of the military who have great heads on their shoulders, great family life, great income, and great support structures, and have found ways to replace that chemical imbalance.
And in the workplace, I want to encourage employers as much as I can too. Like you can't find a better employee than a well-balanced veteran. I mean, they're task oriented, they're mission driven, they are people who can follow rules and regulations and follow a checklist because everything's been done once before. You know, you put an SOP in the hands of a veteran, okay, done, you know? So, you know, I want to give vets the kind of just pride, I guess, of knowing that about themselves too. You made it that far through your service, you're of value to every employer, and people would be lucky to have you. You just have to find the right, you know, the thing that's going to drive you and not just be a job. You want something that you're going to be proud to go to, and hopefully it ends up being something that you feel like you're not just at job at work, but you're at play. You know, that's the best.
Speaking of the doing hard things, do you and the concept of like a Masogi, doing something difficult every year, do you think about that intentionally? Or you try and schedule something on a regular basis so that
Always.
you're accomplishing that on an annual
Always.
or more regular basis?
Yeah, always. I'm a guy who I'm thankful to be surrounded by a lot of entrepreneurs from different masterminds that I've invested in the last 5 years, and the ones that are my favorite are the ones that are like, hey dude, let's do a no drinking for 6 months challenge. You know, like I'm like I haven't had it, actually still haven't had a drink in 9 months because my buddy challenged me to a 6 month, and I barely drank before that, but still, you know, and so my life's better for that. And my life's better whenever I plan a hard hike. And another friend of mine, a partner of in my deal at Wilmington there, he just texted me. He's like, hey dude, you want to do Everest Base Camp next year? And I'm like, tell me more, you know? And so next year, I think that's something we're going to do, and that'll be challenging, but it's on the calendar, you know? And same, the previous buddy who did the drinking challenge, he was like, hey, let's do a half Ironman. I mentioned this earlier, but some crazy details there. He's like, whoever gets the fastest time, obviously wins, but the other two have to pay, I think it was like $1,000. Yeah, it was $1,000 to the other person's charity, to the winner's charity. I was like, oh, I'm gonna smoke you guys. Well, then COVID hits. This is 2019, COVID hit, and the date of the race kept on pushing. At that point, I was kind of training. I was like, okay, I've never done a triathlon, period. I've never swam in a wetsuit, period. So I should probably do something. So then COVID hit, it got pushed to 2022. And I was the only one who followed all the way through. So I ended up completing a half Ironman. At that point, I had no train. I'd never ridden 56 miles on a bike. I'd never swam actually 1.2 miles. And then I had run some half marathons, thankfully, but that was the easiest part of the whole thing, the half marathon at the end. But yeah, like, that was just grit. It was just like show up, and everyone else there, I just felt so out of place because I'm there. My family wasn't there. Like I went solo down to Palm Springs to do this half Ironman, and just because I was like, well, I signed up, so I got to do it, you know. And everyone around me was so prepared. And all I could think was like, I just got to grit it out, you know, and like, it's going to suck. It's 7.5 hours of pain. And exactly what it was. It was so mentally tough to get through because I was not prepared at all. And, but it was worth it. In retrospect, I can say I did a half Ironman without training. So it's there.
And for those out there saying, I don't have buddies that are just calling me up asking to do a half Ironman or any of those things, you be that one. Call 2, 3, 4 guys or girls and say, look, I've got this crazy challenge in mind. Let's go. Let's do it next summer. Let's do it in a couple weeks.
You will find your challenge buddies. Those guys who are just crazy enough to accept something. You're like, even if it's a year out, put something on the calendar. That's how you do it. You just say, hey, I'm gonna go hike rim to rim to rim in the Grand Canyon. And who wants to go? We're gonna do it, and just pick a date and just put it on the calendar and see what happens.
100%.
And awesome things happen when you do that. And then you create a culture of like, not only like mental and physical fitness, but there's some camaraderie there. Then you start creating like, okay, this is somebody I can call when things are hard. This is somebody I can call when I need something more to do. I need to feel like I have a purpose. So go create it.
That's right. And it could be something as simple as, it doesn't have to be a massive trip, although those are great, but it could be as simple as let's record ourselves doing 100 hang cleans with X weight and like see who gets the fastest time. And let's build a little leaderboard. And the best part about that is then you have a forcing function to talk to those guys on a regular basis. And I think that constant connection is what we all need. Just staying in touch, being part of the community, staying tethered to one another, because that's how we do great things and check on our buddies along the way.
It doesn't even have to cost any money. Put on a PT belt and go walk on the highway and pick up trash. I mean, that, you know, like grab a buddy and go area beautification. We're all good at that. So
that's one great Army training right there.
That's such a great metaphor, though. This idea of you doing the half Ironman and not thinking, you said that you felt out of place, that other people were so much more prepared, but that's kind of life, right? And oftentimes maybe they were thinking the same thing. But the grit, it's so impactful if you're entering into a new space or you're entering into something where you're not feeling super comfortable. If you can convince yourself that this is what I'm doing, I'm not going to take no for an answer, and I'm going to keep moving forward, that is absolutely something that's going to really separate you from other people who might not even try. If you don't even have the grit to even sign up, you know, that sometimes that is the hardest thing. But a common message that we're trying to get people to understand while they're transitioning is do the thing, take the action, sign up for the race. At least just do the next thing. You don't have to become an Ironman athlete today. You just have to do the next step. What is today going to look like? What am I doing to further my long-term goals? But keep that long-term goal in mind, so that way each single day you might, over time, you're going to make strides towards your effort. So
yeah, that grit that you just described coincides with one-time courage. I mean, that's the same with the networking example. You know, it's you don't feel like you're a great networker or you don't have anything important to say, but just step in. Take that action. Go step in and see what happens.
And I surprise, like, people will be surprised. One day you will become a great networker by doing it.
6 years ago, you could not tell me that I would be speaking on a stage with 1,000 people. There's no way. Like, where, how, who, all of those questions. Like, there's no way that would be a thing that would be Eric Upchurch. No way. But you take those little actions, become big actions. Honestly, it snowballs, and you can do whatever you want. I'm not special. All the real estate deals that I've done, I was just an E6 in the Army. I literally thousands of people have done what I've done before me. So that was my headspace was like, well, if the dude I saw up there speaking about it can do it, and he's like in board shorts, like what? I've done way harder things than that guy. I can definitely go buy some real estate, which is taught in books and in podcasts, and you can join free communities. And dude, there's nothing stopping you from your dreams but you. And what you just said, Jack, was like, it's just the action part. You just gotta, and I say this, like, it's 1% daily. You know, you just have to put in 1% effort every single day, and by the end of the year, you are way farther ahead than you would have been otherwise. It's not like go learn it all right now and put all the action in and just be great. 1%. What can I do today that is going to make me just a little bit better? if I just read a paragraph, read a book, start listening to a podcast today while I'm on the treadmill. Okay. Like that's where you start.
The very first deal that my wife and I did real estate wise was one of my buddies that I was serving with in the 75th Ranger Regiment. We bought this crappy little house in Columbus, Georgia. Props to him. He was more of a trigger puller than I was at the time. So he was like, let's just do this thing. We'll figure it out. And through YouTube and trial and error, we flipped that house. It went well, but we took that step, and that led to so many things down the road. It all started with that first step and with a partnership with a ranger buddy, with a military buddy. So have you done most of your deals as partnerships? And because I think a lot of people approach it like, I've got to figure this all out on my own, or I want to keep 100% of the deal for whatever reason, but
Yeah.
50% of a deal with a good partner is worth so much more than 100% of.
I mean, I'll tell you, because I get this question all the time. I started with a couple single family turnkeys, and then I had a buddy in Kansas City. We flipped a couple houses, but I'm remote. Like I was like, what value am I bringing there? I can help with some of the stuff, but he was in Kansas City. So ultimately it was like maybe 10 houses, like 7 or 8 that we flipped, and I bought a couple turnkeys, as I said. And then I realized like, this is a lot of work. I also attended a multifamily seminar, and because I'm like, you got to be constantly learning, and I'm kind of hungry to figure out some, what you can do next or in addition to. And so I realized that like, I do not enjoy getting an email from a property manager asking if we can spend $80 to clean the gutters. I don't like, I over and over and over again, every time in my life when those emails come through, I was just like pulling my hair out going like, why do I have to answer this email? It's like, I don't even know if it's worth my time. So I'm glad, in retrospect, I'm glad I did that, but I realized that I could buy commercial and it's a similar amount of work, except then you have people doing all of the things. And so, yeah, I went from I own the thing to I own, and some people are like, oh, well, you only own, a small fraction of the deal if you syndicate an apartment. Okay. Say I own 15% of a deal, or 33% of a deal, or 25% of a deal, but I have almost no work to do except for pay attention on asset management calls once a week and make decisions with the property management team for 1 hour per week per asset. I'm not changing doorknobs. I'm not going to eviction court. I'm not doing so. I will trade a percentage of a deal for more passive income any day. So anybody who rags on, oh, syndicators are only making, I don't care if it's 1% of a deal. If I have no money in that deal, any dollar I make is an infinite return. So too bad. I mean, I'm okay with it. But yeah, typically I will absolutely trade 15% of a deal for less work. It's a good trade-off for me.
Well, Eric, as we start winding down, we ask one kind of 2-part question to every guest on here. The first is one ask. So one thing that folks listening to this could do to help you provide value to you.
Me personally, help me achieve my goal of ending veteran homelessness. If you go to ericupchurch.com/giving, you can check out what we're up to, our latest effort. We do these, obviously, that we talked about, these challenge for charities, I call them, and we raise money for a platinum rated nonprofit called Veterans Community Project. That is most important to me, other than, above and beyond everything else I do, that is what I need to have happen.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for doing that. That's amazing stuff. And then secondly, one give. What's one piece of advice, book, whatever it would be to add value and help others?
Yeah, I think books and podcasts are probably played out a little bit. Everybody knows you can go and get all that stuff. But I will say, I guess I'll reemphasize that I'm not special. And I've had a lot of success in real estate investing and just business with partnerships and just people. And I want to encourage people that to get started, it takes a team. And you're all familiar with teams if you've been in the military. Go find your niche, go find your team again, and let that propel you. I am not special. I have to say that. I'm not, anybody can do this. Whatever it is that you are seeking, put one step in front of the other and go do it. Just take action, like Jack says.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. I think, again, Griffin and I are excited to do this. I mean, I feel like we're gaining value just by having these conversations with all these different people from different backgrounds, but we're really trying to provide a specific bridge to the people who are transitioning, right? Our audience is trying to be pretty focused because that transition, it can be daunting. Depending on what your situation is, what you're into, what you're trying to get into. So thank you so much for your time. Do you have any last piece of specific advice as to what a transitioning service member should be doing, or where you would think in end of summer of 2024, what should they be doing to create success over the next year to be able to transition maybe in a year from now?
I am not a legal a lawyer or an accountant.
Not yet.
But buy a piece of real estate. When rates come down, refinance piece of real estate. Your cash flow will go up, and you can also potentially do a cash out refi. Just in general, I don't even get into details, but like, buy real estate. Use the VA loan, for crying out loud. Zero down on a fourplex if you can. Go do that thing. And then that's the kind of practical, like what you do, physically or whatever. But and then mentally get your head right with the stuff that we talked about here.
Mm-hmm.
Just understand. It's like you buy a new watch that's too expensive. I'm not a watch guy, but people who buy watches, you're going to get buyer's remorse the next day because you spent way too much money on that watch or a pair of shoes or jacket or hat or whatever it was. Know that when you transition, the withdrawal will happen, and be ready for it. Get help, figure it out. We don't need to lose any more brothers and sisters to suicide or destroying their lives just because they lost sense of purpose, mission, camaraderie. Right.
And I do have one very specific question. This is more not for me, but for my situation here in Hawaii. We have approximately 300 or 400 clients that have bought with us who have interest rates in the twos on single family homes that they lived in. When faced with the decision to either sell or rent that out, many of them are looking at negative cash flow because Hawaii is more of an appreciation market. What would your message to those mostly active duty service members who might be looking at maybe $500 or $600 negative cash flow per month, but in an insanely good appreciating market and an incredibly good interest rate? Like I said, some people have 2.25, but they're still looking at negative cash flow. Would you keep it, or what would your advice be?
I live in Northern California and have a 2.375 loan. And I think about this often, and we think about what we would do if we sold this house, or if we moved. Would we sell it or rent it? We would also be maybe negative cash flow, close, right? Because we've refied and done well with that. But I would say if you're comfortable and have a huge nest egg, and you know that in 5 years, that $1 million house will be worth 1.3 or 1.5, go for it. That's a level of risk that you have to be comfortable with. So ideally that's great, because you'll never look back in 10 years in California or Hawaii and go, oh, I'm glad I sold that place. You just won't, so it's just the way it goes. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but every house I've owned in California, I've made money. It's not the Midwest where, or Texas or Florida or something where your property value can go down over a 5 years period. Mm-hmm. Hold on to it if you can, if you want the risk, and if you can afford negative cash flow. I hate, however, next comment, negative cash flow. I hate negative cash flow. I would never buy a property that's negative cash flow, because cash flow is the only thing that's holding up the business, which is ultimately what you're operating. So if you're in a negative cash flow situation, if you rented it and you don't have a nest egg and you don't want the risk, sell that sucker, take whatever profit you have, and go buy 2 properties that are less expensive in a non-appreciating market that cash flow really well. And hold on to those suckers.
And maybe there's a creative option too. If you're someone who knows other single people moving to Hawaii, or people that are willing to rent out by the room, maybe you could get 2 or 3 folks to rent out by the room and cash flow that way. So
that's what our book, Military House Hacking, talks all about it. Absolutely. It's a great thing to do. It's almost like Airbnb type money, rent by the room. Well, student housing, I have a student housing deal too. You rent by the room, not by the unit.
Just make sure it's not infantry lieutenants. They might trash it.
Definitely not Ranger Regiment either.
In Hawaii, they'll be gone the entire time though. So it's actually
Yeah. Let me give you an example too for two turnkeys, because this will be your audience. It kind of puts it in perspective for the non-real estate investors out there. I bought two turnkey properties. Turnkey just means like someone else renovated it. They bought it and renovated it and sold it to me as an investor. And it has a net positive cash flow after all the expenses, including the property manager. So, maybe $200 a month positive cash flow. But I held these, I bought them at 4.5% interest, which sounds fantastic right now. And then 3 years later, so I just like rented them out to people. Actually, there was already tenants in place, which is typical for turnkey. And I was making a couple $100 a month, and I just stashed that away. I didn't ever touch it or anything. And then I refinanced it in 3 years later, like 2021 or something like that. I refinanced at 2.75. So quite a bit of rate reduction. What that rate reduction did from 4.5 to 2.75, it made my debt service, the debt that I owed the bank, less. So my cash flow went up every month, right? But I also, because the values had gone up enough a little bit, I pulled $57,000 cash out of that refi. So my cash flow went up, and I pulled 57 grand out tax free. That is not taxable income. 57 grand tax free, paid cash for my truck, brand new truck. So you can do that with real estate if you hold on to it. So if I still had sold those properties for another 100 grand profit a year later, which is also awesome. But if I just held on to those for 5 more years, I could do the same thing again, another cash out refi, and then another 5 years, same thing. But then by then you can reinvest and build the portfolio. And so you can see how just by refinancing properties over the years, this is how some real estate investors use this method to you just never sell, just keep on repurposing your debt structure and pulling more cash out. And you don't over leverage. The leverage is still 80% loan to value, just like you bought it the first day. But it's just a crazy thing to me. It's like a hack that not enough people talk about. It's just like everybody should know that in high school,
Right. Griff, what was the percentage for VA loan usage? You mentioned
13.
It was like in the teens.
It's
Yeah,
13.
Unbelievable.
Eric said 13. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's unbelievable. How many times have you used a VA loan?
Whenever I can, probably 4 or 5 times. I've had 2 simultaneous VA loans. I mean,
That's
yeah.
great.
I've got 2 right now at the same time.
All 3 of us, I think anybody who realizes this would want to stand on the highest mountain and shout this. And you quite literally, soon you will be standing on the highest mountain.
Yeah, I'm with you.
It's gonna echo through the valleys of California.
I'm gonna be like,
the VA home loan.
buy real estate with the VA loan.
Right. My dad was a Marine veteran from the 70s, and the first time he used his VA loan was 2021. So it's just what you know versus what you don't. Nobody tells you. If they're not an expert in it, they're not gonna tell you about it. So
he got
a good rate though.
He did, yeah. Well, I was his mortgage broker, so
yeah, better than those 70s rates, that's for sure.
Awesome.
Eric, this has been great, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Been good talking with you.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, that is it. Eric, this has been awesome, man.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
I'm truly inspired by all the stuff that you're working on. I can't wait to hear how the hike goes. If you're in the Wilmington area or find yourself Eastern North Carolina, would love to meet up.
Yeah, I think Raleigh's one place, other than California, I think Raleigh is one place that my wife and I would actually consider moving. There's not a lot of them either.
Yeah.
For snow reasons or heat reasons or bug reasons or whatever, California is an awesome spot to live if you can avoid taxes and politics, which I do. I don't owe taxes, and I don't worry about politics at all. I just keep it out of my head.
You don't have any plans. It's just, if you were to
we've got so much family here now. Like my wife's whole family's here, and I keep bugging her. I'm like, well, babe, if we lived in Texas, we wouldn't pay property tax, and like we wouldn't have income tax, and we could buy this like mansion for 500 grand, and like
I could shoot in my backyard.
Yeah, dude, we could do anything you want. We'd have a blue lagoon in the community, and I'm like, gosh, dang, but it's all right. We have a beautiful house in California and stuff, and a lot of equity, so it's all good.
Well, same goes for Hawaii if you're ever visiting. I know there's a huge ADPI community here in Hawaii, so I'm sure you have plenty of people to rely on. But at the very least, I'll offer you a lunch if you're ever in
Oh,
town.
I love it. Are you in Oahu?
Oahu, yep.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
I golf there a couple times, a couple different courses. We go to the country
nice.
club there, and then somewhere on the North Shore also.
There you go.
April.
Which golf course do you remember?
It's the jungle one. It looks like we're Jurassic Park looking place. I forget.
Yeah. There's one that's like if you're not on the fairway, you don't find your ball.
Oh yeah,
it's the jungle.
But I'm the dude on that course. I'm the dude who goes into the jungle to find extra balls because I only golf like 4 times a year, and so I go in there and I'm like, oh, this one's only kind of yellow. Yeah, I'll take this.
Right. Exactly.
I've told Jack
they actually trimmed all those bushes back on that course. So it was like literally a jungle anywhere unless you're on the fairway. But I think last year they trimmed it all back.
I've told Jack my measure for success in a game of golf is if I find more balls than I lose.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Big golf buddies for sure.
Easy to do there for sure.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
We'll
be in touch.
Great to see you, Eric. Good luck on the hike.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Veteran Ventures Podcast. If you heard something interesting or found the show to be helpful, send it to a friend who is transitioning out of the military or considering a transition. We'd also really appreciate if you left a rating and review of the show. That helps us reach more people with these amazing stories of successful veterans. We'll catch you next time on the Veteran Ventures Podcast. And until then, go do the thing. Make that decision, have that conversation, and go find your next mission.